insightful presentation. Thank you, Kunal and Ashish. The way they recited it, showed the videos, it was really, really informative and showed how convergence of technology with automotive industry can be clubbed together. They also talked about the opportunities and the challenges that we are facing today. Who knows, maybe we can leverage that and work on it. So now it's time for the panel discussion, and I'm thrilled to invite our distinguished guest, panel of experts, to enlighten us today. Firstly, let me call upon stage Mr. Ankush Shah, Head Growth Initiatives at Exponentia.ai. With 20 plus years of experience in diverse industries, he specializes in marketing, strategic planning, transformation, and delivery within the realm of BFSI sector as well as retail. Furthermore, he adeptly oversees critical client relationships across diverse regions, including India, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Europe. Next, I'd like to call upon Ms. Sandhya Biswas, Country Head at Morphy Richards. She heads the marketing mandate for the UK-based kitchen and home appliances brand, Morphy Richards in India. With over 16 years of experience in marketing, she has helped brands launch innovative new products for the Indian as well as North American markets. May I call upon Mr. Prateek Gupta, founding partner of Zoo Media. He has co-founded Foxy Moron, a digital marketing agency, at just 19. And within a decade, he has transformed it into Zoo Media, a full-service network partnering with renowned brands like Netflix, Amazon, and L'Oreal. Next, I'd like to call upon Mr. Nishit Rathe, Assistant General Manager at L'Oreal. Currently, he heads the Center of Excellence for E-commerce and D2C. He leads the digital commerce and product UX strategy that enables launch of premium brands like Lancome, Kerestes, and Kiehl's in India. We also have with us Ms. Sakshi Rastogi, Assistant Vice President at IDFC First Bank. She's working on digital marketing powered by hyper-personalized engine and is setting up the benchmark in the organization to run intelligent, personalized, phygital, revenue-driven campaigns. Lastly, let me invite the moderator of our panel discussion, Professor Shabbir Hussain. Put your hand together. Thank you. He's an assistant professor in the marketing department at SPJMR, with almost 2 decades of rich experience across corporate and academic domains that includes academia at SPJMR, IIM Udaipur, IIM Raipur, and management consulting at Boston Consulting Group. Over to you, sir.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon. And this is for all of us, right? Excellent. So before I start off, so I have a set of questions for all of you. But before I start off, I thought I'll just congratulate, I think the organizing committee. I don't know whether this is by design that you have got this kind of a panel. Because as you were, I think as we met outside, and I was also listening to Saloni's introduction, you look at the set which we have here. Very interesting because we have B2B players and we have B2C players. We have extreme firms which have been in the traditional business for a fairly long time. We have firms that are fairly new gen kind of a firms, right? New tech kind of a firms. Product-based, services-based. So in that sense, I think we'll hopefully get very interesting kind of perspectives, and I'm going to push a lot of you to the wall, huh? Because my starting question, and this I'll probably start off with you, Sandhya, on this one. Huh?
Okay, right off the bat, is it?
Yes. So we're talking about customer centricity in the digital age. Now, you go back 63 years, and 1960, Theodore Levitt, he talks about this thing called marketing myopia, which is where Sir talked about an outside-in kind of a perspective versus an inside-out kind of a perspective. When we look at an outside-in perspective, essentially keeping the customer at the center, now these are things which have been there forever. Right? And in fact, even Kunal mentioned that these things have been forever. How do you think that these things have changed in the current digital kind of an age? Why is customer centricity at the center now? And if what would really help is if you could bring out certain examples, from Morphy Richards, and given that you lead the NPD piece also there, that would really help, ma'am.
Thanks. I don't know if customer centricity has changed really. I feel like that's always been at the core of every good, I would say, a good marketing mind. I think some of the points that your teams mentioned as well, and also in the keynote speech as well, I think it's about ensuring that we don't lose sight of what consumers are looking for now, especially with the amount of the access to data that we have of their every move and their every preference. I think that's what's we just have greater access to consumer insights now than ever. I would say that some of the appliances we are launching, other than the common inclusions of IoT, it's also an understanding of how in the future appliances itself in a home can interact with each other. Setting up a smart home where consumers can ensure that let's say a use case of if your room heater is set to a certain temperature, your fan also starts working at the same, so that you have an optimal comfort for that consumer home. So I would say that it's not changed so much as it's become more accessible for us to have that experience. At the same time, I would say, I think one of the things I appreciate about the presentation was the emphasis on the post-purchase, opportunity. I think a lot of us are so obsessed in marketing with the pre-purchase opportunity that we lose sight of how much the dissonance happens after that. So, we offer, a 1 lakh rupee coffee machine, and the most common input we get is, how does this thing work? And you have to contact a customer care center. But now we are working on integrating warranty and demos in a more digital way with the consumer journey as well. So the journey after purchase, I think, is one of the biggest opportunities for consumer delight. And that's something that we're also very hyper-focused on now.
And how do you capture that data? Because I think, again, as Rajiv had pointed out earlier, there were those traditional mechanisms. So have things changed in terms of the way we capture that data?
I think now, I think 71% millennials at least report a great satisfaction using chatbots. I think that's what we're also, we've moved our journey a lot, for post-purchase, especially to those digital ways where we are interacting with consumers directly especially for warranty claims and the customer satisfaction demo piece entirely. And now with virtual demos, that's entirely moving to a very I would say a digital space. The whole post-purchase piece.
Beautiful. So Ankush, your LinkedIn profile says, "Give me data, I'll give you insights."
Yes.
Sir, my problem. There is one lady who knows more about me than my wife. And that lady is Alexa. Now, with all of this thing and you going at leveraging that data, she talked about having all of that data. Sir, how do you take all of this into account while also keeping the consumer wellness, the consumer privacy kind of a stuff into account, right? Because that, again, should probably fall at the heart of customer centricity, right?
So that's a very difficult question today because, as you mentioned, Alexa, and probably your phone is also tracking you right now in terms of if you got any one of the big apps installed, they're probably sending that data out there. And since you mentioned Alexa, he's already nodding his head. The media guy knows that, right? So you, by default, given consent to almost every app that you install on your phone, right? So that's by default, you already agreed to your data being shared across platforms, right? So that's one thing that people need to now understand also, that I'm going to click no for all of these, or I'm going to make the selections, and that's on you. It's not on the companies, right? And if you attended the session in the morning, yes, there is a lot of talk about it. Governments are doing that. GDPR is happening. There is a lot of initiatives from all of the governments as well. But yes, at the end of it, it's your data, right? There was a big hullabaloo about Aadhaar as well. Government's collecting information, your fingerprints, your iris scans, everything's there up there in the cloud. You can just get it verified at, in 30 seconds right now itself that, is this fingerprint mine or not? So the data is already there. It's how well is it secure? Yes, there is ways and means to secure it, but are the organizations willing to pay? Second, are you willing to secure your own data? Because you own your data, right? So how, now Europe, there are places in Europe where it's mandatory. If I can erase my entire history and profile and ask organizations to do that. People don't do that in India yet. So that's catching on, but it's going to take a while, right? But there are countries that are enabling that. It'll probably take some while for that to happen in India as well.
Chief, a follow-up question, and this is a different question now. So this was, I'll probably continue this one with you. I'll come back to you on the privacy part. Now, when you work with a very small set of customers, right? It's a very hardcore B2B space, very small set of customers.
Yes.
You mentioned only about 15, 20 customers per year. So when you look at scouting for these customers, and I'm sure you would have these customers' centricity at your mind, and you might even be looking at their customer centricity.
Yes.
So how do you approach your clientele, and how does the funnel look at your end? How do you approach the funnel from your business perspective,
Right.
if not a trade secret?
Not a trade secret, pretty much doing the same stuff. Reach out on LinkedIn, meet people, understand their profiles, right? So specifically, a lot of this is referral based, and referrals also bring us the customer centricity because, again, I know you probably are the right customer for my requirement, and if somebody else is referring to you, so the same thing that you mentioned, right? Perception. If I am being perceived in somebody else's eye as the perfect fit, right? Even if I'm just 80% there, I am a better, and if I'm there in front of you, I am probably a better fit than somebody else whom you've not even seen or has not been referred, right? So again, referrals, the feedback that comes from existing customers, they're the ones who are going to give you referrals. My vendors, my competitors are not going to give me referrals. So existing customers are the ones, and I've had customers since the last 7 years, 8 years, who've been working with us on a continuous basis. It's like a marriage. We give some and they give some.
Excellent. So I think just continuing on that thread, non-privacy part, you manage the digital marketing piece here. And which is where I think big time on performance marketing also comes in here. Hyper-personalization is something that you look for. In a world that we are going forward towards, where all those third-party cookies are going to be a thing of the past, right? So how is it that your firm is looking at carrying out that hyper-personalization in absence of those third-party cookies? Yes, first-party cookies, I mean, you'll try to build first-party data, but beyond that, is anything happening in terms of building that hyper-personalization piece, capturing that data?
So I'll break this down into two parts on privacy concern from customer point of view, right? So there was a study by McKinsey, and it was a global study, not particularly Indian, that 71% of the customers today prefer personalization, which means they are aware that their data is being shared and they're happy and they want their consumer or their organizations or entities to give them personalized information. I think the concern specifically on privacy, and since I'm from a bank, right? I don't think customers have a problem sharing a data. Customers have a problem when they're not in control of that data, right? Which is when, if I've shared an information with an entity, I expect them to honor it and ensure it is not shared with any third-party organizations, third-party vendors, and so on and so forth. So definitely there is a lot of focus on privacy. There's a lot of focus on ensuring that we, even within, right, just to build on an example, even within the bank, I as an employee don't have access to certain data points because I'm from a sector which is core banking sector, right? So even within the bank, there's so much sensitivity on core data. Coming on the digital marketing piece that you asked, right, which is how do we also, every time there's an interaction with any entity, whether a bank, we always in some shape or form try to capture some consent and try to get that data going, right?
that today becomes our main source of personalization, right? The interactions that you have, whether it is in the form of going to my app, whether it is going to my website, whether it is interacting with chatbots, whether it is reading my emails, any consumer behavior that is there out, we try to capture that behavior. And we try to ensure as a bank that we are able to market. Now, there are two type of customers within a bank: someone who has an account with you and someone who doesn't. Now, of course, who doesn't have an account with you, there it's very tricky to get any sort of information, right? And there you rely on third parties, and there you rely, which is something as a bank we don't particularly go out to and buy data from. We, of course, have the bureaus of the world to help us assess, and that's what we use, but in a very ethical manner. We as a bank totally go on secured sources to understand the profile of the customer, and basis that we do our hyper personalization. However, for a customer who already has an account with us, we have, without dwelling on a lot of details, we have against one each customer, we have 3,000 attributes attached as soon as they open an account, which are behavioral, which are financial, which are of various varieties, and that is what we leverage for hyper personalization. And that's my job within the organization, that I don't need to spray and pray anymore, right? Which is what digital typically ends up doing. So we are trying to set up, and I am part of that, I'm leading that team which ensures that I personalize each communication and each interaction with the consumer in that way. So that's how it is.
Excellent. Nishit, now one is personalization at a communication level that you talked of. You work on customer journeys across different channels, right? Which is ideally, I think, when we talk of marketing and we talk of omnichannel, a lot of time while we discuss it, we feel that we're probably not still there, right? We have multiple channels. We may not eventually be doing an omni-channel kind of a piece. So how is it that at L'Oreal you're trying to build that omni-channel kind of a journey of a customer, a journey that starts at one touch point, probably ends up at another touch point? How do you do that? How do you capture that, Chief?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And before I get into the answer, one critical fact to know is that if you look at beauty penetration online, the beauty penetration online is only 7%. So of all the internet users in India, only 7% buy beauty online. Now, what is the core reason for that? The core reason is consumer experience. Because the kind of consumer experience that you get when you're talking to, let's say, a beauty advisor in Shoppers Stop, or let's say in any important cosmetic store, in a Sarojini in Delhi or in Crawford Market in Mumbai, you do not get that kind of an consumer experience online. And that is why it becomes important for us to build strong consumer experience online, be it D2C and e-commerce, and at the same time, try and build an omni-channel journey. How are we trying to get there? While online, we are trying to do a number of things, right? From augmented reality to semantic analysis of reviews to consumer journeys. So, there are tools like Microsoft Clarity that give you an exact understanding of what is happening on our website. When it comes to omni-channel, the whole point is slightly different. It all comes down to acquisition of PII, okay? So not even first-party data, we are talking about personally identifiable information, okay? So it all starts with that. Now, how do you do that? Because it's a very unique situation wherein this consumer is actually at a beauty store, and the beauty store owner knows that if you get access to the consumer data, it is actually a conflict of interest for him, because eventually you are going to try and drive this person to your website. And that is the critical balance that we are trying to strike right now. One of the ways that we are doing this is by launching beauty tech in the store. Okay, so what happens is many a times women, especially Gen Z, they do not want to try different shades of lip color while in a Shoppers Stop because they are already wearing the lip color they want. So what you do here is that you have a device, and it will even evolve to an actual glass, wherein you can see right in front how you will look like with augmented reality with the new shade of lip color. And while you do that, you acquire data. Not only do you acquire personally identifiable information, you can capture a lot more attributes than that. And then you tie it back into your own CRM. And maybe in cases like Shoppers, very evolved retailers, you also tie it to their CRM and have some sort of an candy for others as well. But the acquisition of data is the only inroad right now for cracking the entire omnichannel experience. Without that, it is impossible to do it in an offline plus online kind of environment. Not just that, we actually want to do O plus O plus O, which is offline, online, and eventually the metaverse. So data is the starting point.
But so you're saying that the way to handle conflict right now is to bring the tech into the store.
Yes. See, what you are doing, right, is that you're telling the store is that if you have this kind of beauty technology in your store, you are delivering a better consumer experience. It is all coming down to consumer experience. Okay. So, and the reason, and in fact, consumer centricity is a word we are not even using in the organization right now, because consumer centricity is a concept. Consumer experience is what you deliver. Okay. And then you start thinking on those lines that how do I deliver the best experience? So what you are doing is that you are improving conversion rate in the store. Okay. And that becomes an important enabler for the store as well to take.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. Prateek, you probably do a very difficult task. Difficult because I think you also not only you have clients, you also do consulting for those clients in terms of what to buy, how to buy, which means you need to have a very sharp understanding of what your customer are. So is there a standard process or a protocol that you follow for that? Something that we can learn and kind of, probably start applying?
Yes. I mean, any touch point that is being activated by any of them is already generating data, right? It's that data is either freely available in the market or that data is acquirable in the market. I mean, with lots of retailers that we work, I know for a fact I get data sets of people who have entered competition stores. I get data sets of people who have entered the stores of the same people inside multiple different places. The data sets are available for everybody to get access to. The data sets are not available, and I think everybody thinks of it like that. Oh, I'll get name, numbers, email IDs. Everything will be available in an Excel sheet, and like somebody's going to email that Excel sheet to you. No, this is hashed data that's available for you to allow you to do retargeting across different other platforms. Second is there are tools which are giving you this sort of information. There are the Metas and the Googles and the Amazons of the world are also providing this sort of data to you. So you understand the entire universe that's existing for you to be able to target these people on an always-on basis. The fourth thing that I think in the midst of always trying to tackle consumer centricity with technology, we forget the importance of the role that content plays in being able to continue to generate this sort of data for you. I'll give one example. We launched Gujarat Titans when they came into the IPL 3 years ago. It was a strange IPL because it was only happening in one city, and Gujarat was a new team that paid almost $1 billion to tap into a market inside of Gujarat. But we couldn't go to that audience. Every brand that was associated with Gujarat Titans wanted to go to the Gujarat or the Gujarati all around the world, and that was the customer that they were chasing. But now suddenly, because all of the matches were happening in Bombay, they didn't have access to that market. And that's where we deployed this O2O2O sort of a strategy where whatever activations we did in those marketplaces, we got those people from the offline world into the online world. Once I got them into the online world, I wanted to know, obviously team selection is a very, very technical ecosystem, but I also wanted to know what players resonate with a marketing voice, right? Do they like Hardik Pandya more? Do they like Rashid Khan more? Who is resonating with whom? Are they resonating with Hardik Pandya's batting? Are they resonating with Hardik Pandya's bowling? And we started to feed this information into the WhatsApp chatbot one after the other to start to get this insight. Now I know a customer profile of a person who likes just watching highlights. So I'm not going to go and push 15 pieces of content that person would otherwise see on my social media platform. I know for a fact that this person likes, just the brand and the branded integrations. I know this person has the ability to buy a ticket. I know this person has the ability to buy internally. So we purposely created an ecosystem that started to give us this insight, right? So what we are doing with all of our customers today is we're saying exactly what you said. Cookies are going away. The ability for us to get data, to create your own data is only going to get more expensive. Laws are coming in. Privacy is becoming a big part of the conversation that everyone's having, which means that this access of data or this deluge of data that we see today available at affordable price points that allow for their business models to be sustainable exist today. But you need to plan for that digital future where acquiring this data is going to be expensive. It's what I say is the greatest example of almost all D2C brands, right? When D2C brands came into the country, what did they say? They said, I spend 30 to 40% of the money of my selling price towards a retailer. I have the ability to now spend that 30 to 40% in marketing and acquire that customer for myself. As soon as that 30 to 40% became 70 to 80%, lots of these business models stopped stacking up, right? Like we did something with an energy bar, and we went back to Amazon, and he says annually we are able to sell 150,000 energy bars. Year one, year three, they were annually able to sell 175,000 energy bars. The market grew by 25,000 over 3 years, but the number of brands grew by over 40. Now on Amazon, they're going after the same 175,000 customers, which means the cost per click, which means the reach, the cost of reach, the ability to interact has gone up. Out of those 40 today, about 20 have shut down because the business model is no longer viable. So usually when we're going to our clients and we're trying to educate them, we're basically trying to tell them that, listen, the cost of acquiring this data for yourself today may seem high, but it's nothing as compared to what this cost of data will be 2 years or 3 years from today. So not only acquire this data, but also find data points on the technology spectrum, on the content spectrum, on the offline spectrum, and try to get them into a singular place which generates this PII, like he said, so that we're able to make more calculated decisions, because reaching out to people is going to get costlier, not cheaper. Right, and we are privileged because we have 1.4 billion people. So at any points in time, we can always find like, this is my core audience, this is my audience on the other side. You go to smaller markets, and we set up an office in Dubai, and I called up my media guy and I said, I need a media plan, and he said, okay, what's the reach? And I told him 1 million people, and he said, please call me tomorrow in the morning because I'm right now writing a plan for 200 million people, right? So we have to understand that the customer centricity for us is a growing concept because we have so many customers. In an evolved market, in an evolved country, where the customer size is a very limited number, right? He spoke about 7% people buying. I mean, we worked with L'Oreal when nobody was buying online, right? Everything was happening in the offline ecosystem. And we know when the Nykas came into the world, we know when Amazon started their whole beauty division, and we worked with them to be able to solve this. We saw how that 1% has now reached 7%, and every time everybody inside any beauty space talks, they talk about the ability for us to move in that direction. Most other countries that you are dealing with, they already know the size of their audience. So for them to retain that data becomes that much more important. We have a problem of plenty. Hence, I mean, the panel seems to be far forward thinking, but our job of consulting people to tell them that this stuff is not going to work in 3 to 5 years is half the job that all of us do.
Excellent. I have a question for the two of you there, Ankush and Sandhya, because both of you kind of work with products. So first, I think, Ankush, when you look at your own product, right, the product that you offer, how do you work towards building of that product? Because your business use cases are also going to be very different. So how do you develop your own product at Exponentia?
So a lot of it is, as you mentioned, right, knowing the customer's customer. Because if I don't know what the end goal is and what the end customer wants to get done, right? Because it's all about UX. How is the customer's experience going to be? The customer centricity that the organization is also asking for. Because there are two parts to it. One is, how much are you willing to invest in terms of time and effort, right? Not even cost. Time and effort to understand that customer and understand the requirement, frame it well, and say, this is what I want to achieve, right? The cost comes after that. So it's what is it that you want to achieve? Because one is we are fighting against time, because the longer I take to do this, either somebody else has already come and disrupted the market, or I am now trying to debate on the cost piece that, I want the be all end all kind of a product, and it's going to take 3 years to roll it out, and somebody else has rolled it out in 3 months and already started, right? So one is identifying, breaking it down, prioritizing what the requirements are going to be, what is it that I put in first phase, second phase, third phase, and get started with something at least. Because everybody keeps talking of data, but as we are going along the way, it's getting that much harder to get data. That's one. On the other side, there is so much data. Such a, I would say, so much junk that is there, that sifting through just that and identifying what's actually usable is another pain, right? And with larger organizations, the larger we get, that's even more painful. Because I've been working with RBI on the data warehouse of Indian economy. We have data from 1930s, stock market data, property data. Almost everything that the government of India captures is there in the data warehouse. How is it usable? Nobody knows. Even RBI is still struggling to make that happen, right? Because it's just been captured, it's being captured, and it's running into terabytes right now. But how do I capitalize on that? Right now, the government has started looking at, okay, can I get data from Amazon? Can I get data from Reliance Retail? Can I get data from DMart? To look at how actual inflation is happening on the ground right now. Because by the time the inflation data gets reflected, the newspapers, the media, opposition, everybody's already saying, boss, tomatoes are 200 rupees a kg. The opposition knows that before, or the media knows that before it's actually getting published in the inflation numbers, right? So we are moving much faster than the data actually is moving. And that's where the government is now taking those initiatives, which is what we already had the capabilities to do that many years back, right? So there are use cases. There is ways and means to do it. It's just a matter of, somebody getting started, breaking it down and saying, this is what I want first.
Very good. Sandhya, now everyone has been talking about customer centricity. Everyone has talked about data. Everyone has talked about how do you go about it. Now, if every organization understands it, why do you think is it that some organizations do it better than others? And what are the key lessons for us to draw from this?
That's a good question. I think the appreciation has to come from how non-linear consumer journeys have become entirely almost. And I think traditionally marketers are still, old school with assuming a very linear funnel of, that awareness to purchase being very linear. I think that's the first acceptance. And even for us, COVID was the best year for appliances and anything because you're spending so much time at home. And we moved very quickly to understanding, the fact that it will be an entirely omnichannel world. And if you don't succeed in that world, that is where the trouble begins. And now journeys can begin on social media. Consumer journeys can, completely get fulfilled on social media entirely. So I think one is that appreciation of that. And then I think in an omni-channel world, what really is important is that having that one consumer view, which I think a lot of companies have to start investing in having that, which I think is a matter of adoption in a way. How do you invest in having that one view of the consumer journey across functions and exposing that view to functions? And the other challenge is obviously ensuring that empowerment happens. So often you will hear, a consumer grievance on a social media platform, but that seldom gets translated to the right department. And so in that journey, whether it's an acquisition of that customer or a conversion of that sale or a grievance in terms of experience with the product, I think that empowerment and that working of at the back end, that change management is something that is at the heart of understanding where the omni-channel journeys are moving to. I think that's adoption of that, acceptance of that, I think is the key function. So a lot of organizations are not yet there, I would say. I think it's very few. Traditionally, product organizations are still not there, even though 30% of my sales are online, and that's a huge amount of an online journey for my for a traditional category like appliances. But even then, I would say that whole understanding of how how omnichannel the world has become is that acceptance is not yet fully dawned, I would say.
Very good.
So I had this thing, right? So we've been working with a call center, a BPO rather, who does the calls. They do the email management. They do the customer IVR. They do all of these different channels that they use for customer grievance addressing, right? Now, we also work with other competitors of them. Now, there's only this one organization that's willing to go the extra mile in terms of identifying that, hey, Shabir has a problem. He reached out to me on email. He's trying to call me on the call center, and I can identify him because his number is registered, right? So he also he logged on to my web interface, right? Now, how do I know that is the same person happening at the same time? It's a cost for the company to be able to identify that. Now, is the management being that customer focused to identify that before Shabir gets through the call or his call dropped in the middle of the IVR because everybody's just, holding on listening to that, the music that's going on. Can I identify, Shabir, this is your problem? This is what I've identified as a resolution and come back. Something that these guys just play the video for, right? That's only one company out of the 10 companies that I work with is looking at that kind of a solution at the moment. As in, of course, this was 3 years back, but that's what they were looking at. And the other guys have still not even started. They're not even looking at that.
You wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like, because I'm from the agency side, right? Like, our first question is, who's my audience? Is it the CMO? Is it the CIO? Right? The traditional CMO versus CIO conversation, right? They both speak a language that the other person doesn't understand. Do I take the digital transformation cost and put it in my IT budget, which obviously does not allow for this transformation to happen? Every marketing technology company that you look at, and it's like D2C brands, it's an infestation. There are probably more than 5,000 of them today, each claiming to solve the entire funnel. And when that technology adoption actually happens, it solves some part of it. But because the key decision makers are not able to see the entire picture, right? A large part of the time, the journey stops right over there. So everybody that I speak to has the intent to do this, right? But in some cases, they don't have the technical visualization. I'm not even saying expertise. In technology today, expertise is freely available. You throw a stone and 10 people will raise their hand to say, I can technologically deploy this. But the ability to see through technology, it's complex. It's not easily made understandable by the people who are trying to sell it, because then the complexity of the problem goes away, and therefore the price point goes away. And they don't understand that the marketing person and the CIO are trying to solve similar problems through very, very different sorts of approaches. And a large parts of the places where this breaks down, it breaks down because the decision making is not very clear, or the decision making is being run by people who are not technologically savvy to understand the advancements that are possible, right? Like this similar example, we solved it 18 months ago for TVS, their e-bikes. We do 45,000 replies in under 5 minutes for them. And we're able to understand, the first response is under 5 minutes, and we're able to understand if the consumer is similar, but we had to ensure that the call center, the digital agency, which is us, the central database and the CRM that TVS is running, and the central database and the CRM that comes from each of the service centers and sales points are married into a singular place where all of the data is thrown in, right? So I know exactly where all of this is coming through. Technically, it's neither a BPO problem, it's neither what we call a response management problem. It's a problem of a company that's obsessed with customer centricity, where they understand that if I take care of this customer over here, this noise will stop in all other places, right? And this guy will not going to take that fire and burn my entire house down, which is possible today. So it's a lot of these variables that don't allow for clear decision making. And therefore, smaller organizations are faster to adapt to customer centricity, and then in your traditional world, they get acquired.
See, at the end of the day, I agree with both of them. At the end of the day, I think it's a matter of investment in this. This is transformation before everything else. This is companies investing in digital transformation to enable a one view of that customer. I think services are far ahead in that sense because they have to have that. But product companies are slower because this investment has, I think the returns are, how do you measure that? Because it's how do you have a measure for customer centricity other than, you know, your traditional NPS metrics? So that's why probably business cases never get approved unless, you know, the vision of a leader is to ensure transformation first, and then, you know, everything else follows. Then you can fix the change management, like I spoke. Then you can fix the empowerment at a call center level, at a digital, the guy managing your ORM level. But before that is this investment in the technology that comes.
Excellent. So I have one more question for the two of you before I pass it on to the audience. So I think when we look at all of these conversations, Peter Drucker comes to my mind. I think when he talks about like culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So everything is driven by, you might have the best of strategy, but if you don't have the right enabling culture for it, everything goes for a toss in that sense. So can you help me understand, because given that you're leading that entire e-com, D2C kind of a space, within the space that you're leading it, how are you setting in that, enabling that culture, which is there? Because every conversation that has happened here talks about putting people at the center. But yeah, I have people at the center, but वहाँ पे मेरा धंधा भी जा रहा है. Between dhanda and people, I know that dhanda needs to come from people, but between dhanda and people, dhanda. So how do you ensure that those things are taken care of within your verticals?
Yeah, so there are two things. I mean, fundamentally, there is only one thing that we are trying to do, which is, how do you build use cases and connect them to outcomes? Okay, so when it comes to commerce, or let's say, the dilemma between dhanda and long term, how are we trying to do it? So one example can be, let's take the case of, let's say, Amazon or any e-commerce marketplace. Something goes wrong in the product reviews, okay, it immediately reflects on your rating, and that immediately reflects in the next PO that you have got, okay, because there are organizations like Amazon in which the entire purchase ordering cycle is linked to the algorithm, and the algorithm is linked to a lot of metrics, one of which is reviews and ratings. So that is one way we try to educate the commerce side of the organizations that, hey, this is how your product page needs to look, and this is how the sentiment needs to be on your page. This is how you use content to influence sentiment on the page, and this will eventually lead to a better commerce outcome, and hence invest on the page in terms of commerce and everything that you need to do. The other thing that we are trying to do more on the strategic and consumer side of things is that when it comes to traditional organizations, generally we have a traditional team called a consumer market insights, which exists in any most traditional organizations. Now, consumer market insights by default, because this kind of organization exists since long, they are used to find insights by creating simulations. Okay, so they would use simulations. Let's say even Nielsen, Millward Brown, all of the research organizations, they actually create simulations or some sampling and basis that they derive a statistically significant outcome, and the organization decisions on the consumer are taken basis that. What we are trying to do there is to say that how now with data, and especially with D2C, you can use real world outcomes to identify what is going to happen next. So if I go back to the same shopper journey thing, you do not need to create a simulation or go to a research agency to identify what is broken in your journey. You just need to, there is already a piece of code that you can deploy on your site, and it tells you precisely what is happening. You actually get session recordings. So the second thing that we are trying to do is trying to influence the consumer market insights team to change the mindset slightly, or transform from a simulation mindset to a real world sampling mindset. And this is how we are trying to drive culture.
So that in terms of doing the sales, in terms of supporting the consumers.
So, like you said, right, there are two ways to handle this. So, dhanda is dhanda. And in the end, an organization will focus on your lead generation or your conversion. But the way to ensure that there's customer centricity in it is also ensuring you measure very soft, however, very critical customer behavior points or KPIs to understand whether he's happy with the journey or not. For example, in our digital marketing, when we do any interactions with the consumer, we try to see how many times is the guy interacting with my communication, how much is the product holding with that customer, which is PPC, how much is my likelihood for him to come back and interact with me, right? So there are these various very strong marketing KPIs that we monitor in addition to lead. If I only look at leads, there are various hacks to just spike up leads. But we don't want to do that. We want to look at leads. We want to look at customer sentiments, like he said, right? Which can be in the form of what is the number of times the guy is coming back to me? What is the number of times he's taking products from me, right? So that's one way that we try to ensure that we don't look just at the business number. We also look at 4 to 5 at least KPIs, which will help me identify a customer sentiment or a customer coming back to me. The second critical that I feel is a big culture changer, right? Is talking to the customer is not just the customer facing team's job. The voice of the customer is something even your backend team needs to understand. So whether it is going for a mystery shopping and trying to understand how a customer is buying your product, whether it is actually going on field, like for example, if someone takes a loan with us, you have a lot of interactions with the customer. So we tag our teams with them to actually understand. Sitting in an AC and in a corporate office, we have a lot of intuition, ye to aisa. But when you go in that field, visit someone's house and actually understand the pain points of the customer is how you realize what the actual customer view is. So there are these typical 2 ways that we try to do. One is qualitative and tangible that we can measure. Another is qualitative that we can go and see the team that is working, especially in marketing, understand the consumer journey by actually going on field, talking to them, listening to calls, also monitoring surveys, also monitoring feedback, star ratings, all of that to ensure that Dhanda is not compromised or customer experience is not compromised in the name of Dhanda.
Super. So this entire conversation has happened around customer centricity. And all of us here, I think, have Jignesh centricity. So Jignesh Bhai, whatever Jignesh Bhai says, rules. So one thing that I've been asked is, I think, one key message from each one of you for our larger student body before we open it up for their Q&A. So one key message that you want to give out to them, because now they're another 3 months, they would all be done with their piece. So any key message that you have for them before we open it up?
Key message
in context of this.
Sure, if I... Okay, so I will quote, I don't know how appropriate this is, but a quote from Benjamin Parker to the young Peter Parker, that with great power comes great responsibility, right? And as future marketers, you will have access to ton of data and you will be very, very enticed to take shortcuts. You know, a business will always come and tell you कि ये KPI बढ़ाना है, वो बढ़ाना बहुत easy है. You will be able to do that very fast. But as future marketers, we also have the responsibility of doing the consumer right and doing this in the right way, right? So I entice everyone to, especially this personal recommendation, that read more about choice architectures, read more about behavior sciences, read more about cognitive biases, where there is a concept called lateral paternalism, which is you influence the consumer to make their decision. However, you do let them execute a freedom of choice to a big extent, right? So read, educate, understand how is this, you can hack into a consumer cognitive bias without compromising on their freedom of choice. Especially from where I come, right? Marketing, everyone is so enticed by clicks and conversions and CPAs. Bring that knowledge with you. That's what I personally try to tell my team as well. That don't take shortcuts just for the heck of taking shortcuts. Ensure you have the long-term view as well. So that's what I would definitely advise everyone to read up on and ensure if they do end up joining something which is on the line of marketing and engagement, that will help. So that's something that I definitely, as marketing advice.
सब धंधा है पर गंदा है ये. Right. I definitely agree. It just that doesn't stop when you get a job. You need to continuously keep engaging, learning, readapting, and ensuring that the learnings stick around as well, right? And if you learn, break things fast, and of course, correct it, right? That's the only thing that I can keep saying.
I don't have much. I don't have much more gyan to give, but in general, I would say put the customer centricity at the heart of it, in the sense of the technologies can come and go, and one has to obviously understand the implication of those technologies, whether it is generative AI or overall digitization and the trends in personalization. But something that has kind of continued to stay in trend is understanding with deep empathy what the customer needs. We spent around 2 years understanding what customers needed before we launched the product for our new brand. So I think that empathy is needed, whether it's through design thinking or any other way. I would say that is at the heart of being obsessed with the customer. I would say that wouldn't change.
Two things actually. One is the fact that in the complexity of everything that's coming to you today, right? Like I think we're almost at the industrial revolution all over again. There was an internet revolution in the middle, and now we'll see an AI revolution in some form or the other. The complexities that technology will throw at you, the rule of go back to your basics and keep things simple still goes back and applies now more than ever. There's too much of information, too much of bias that you're generating in your own head as well. Listen to everything, but go back to your basics, go back to the simple things that have lasted for a very, very long time. I think that's very, very critical for where we are. And the last thing I'll leave everybody with is that it's very, very expensive to get a new customer today. It's cheaper to retain the customer. And therefore, if you spend your time in retaining the customer, your businesses, dhanda, everything will sort itself out. And if you want to retain your customer, you have to look at the inverted funnel after the first funnel of IDA. And that inverted funnel today has so many more ways of navigating the same marketing journey. So, like I said, retain the customer, don't always just go for new customers, and just keep it simple. I think lots of what we do is overcomplicated in our heads, but the simplest actions give us the best results.
So I have an interesting quote to share. I don't know who had said it, but it goes something like this, which is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So the point is that we know that data is the most important thing. We know that AI is coming, or it's already there, and we know that there are new technologies that like blockchain. There is all of this rational data and concepts and technology that we have. But unless and until we identify how we use these technologies to build something that inspires people or that moves people, because that is how brands get built, that is how affinity and businesses get built, and CLTV comes from. So what I would like to say is that, have all of these, there is data and technology, but if you can use this to really move people, I think great businesses can be built with that. So that's my message. Thank you.
Okay, before I open the floor for question, I have a question for all of you. And this is a question which is coming right from the first marketing class that I had taken with you. What is marketing? I want to hear that response right now. Huh? What is marketing? Haan bhai?
Are you checking whether they are awake or sleeping?
Nahi, I want that answer. Haan. Help us understand what that CCD is. So what we've told them right from the first class is, and this is the first class, the first question, marketing is all about CCD. Ganje ko kangi nahi pelane ka, मतलब बेचने का is not marketing, right? As you said, right? You can twist and move around data. You said you can pick up whatever numbers you want to give out, and marketing is all about creation of value, communication of value, and delivery of value. And that value, as all of you have been talking about, is not a value that we determine in our heads, sir, as you mentioned. It's a value that is determined by our consumers. And not just, again, by every consumer, as you've been mentioning that you have different use cases, which mean different segments. So each segment has its own perception of what is value, what is the need, sir, that you talked about in your lens. So, right, everything that you have done so far has been around that concept of value, and you see a demonstration of each one of those elements across services, products, B2B, B2C, all of those genres. So any question that you have now?
A very good afternoon. My name is Bhavya Nagrani, and I wanted to ask that how have the marketing strategies changed pre and post COVID, and has that led to any increase in the focus on customers?
B2C guys.
I forgot about COVID actually, thankfully. But for me, because you're running digital agencies, I think COVID also went by a little fast because everybody wanted to speak to us all over again. I really appreciated the fact that the C-suite were now having conversations in terms of what they need to do from a digital point of view. Digital revolution really kicked into India, which means that now, those conversations in 2019 that we used to ask saying, sabji thodi na kharidenge over UPI, is now not even a conversational point that any one of us have, which also meant that digital journeys changed very, very drastically, right? Like, I don't carry any cash ever, right? Like, to the extent that I've been caught without cash in foreign countries because I thought, yeah, they'll also have it if we have it. But we're very, very far ahead of that curve. And different brands responded very differently. It was great from a marketeer lens that we saw that the acceleration of digitization from what we used to traditionally call traditional marketing agencies, or sorry, not agencies, but traditional marketing clients, we saw that adoption happen. But what I'm also seeing, like how I forgot about COVID, that whatever they were able to achieve during COVID is what they achieved during COVID, and now even they've forgotten about COVID, right? So they're going back to that whole sense of going back to their traditional methods, which is not bad. It's always worked for them. It's generated that kind of revenue. But I think now we're reaching an age where this balance or this journey of omnichannel needs to be continuing to solve. But I'll leave you with the last thing, right? The greatest thing that I learned during COVID was that the metrics with which brands were measuring themselves had started to change. It was no longer about just the bottom of the funnel. How many am I acquiring? What is my awareness? Do I have a certain frequency? We work with Netflix for the last 4 years. All of their marketing is something that we do. And they started to chase this metric, which I found very interesting, called brand love. They said, we want to track and generate brand love. So the first meeting, everybody in the agency obviously nodded their head. Then everyone went back and researched. It didn't exist. And then we said, shit, we got to solve for this. And then we started to figure that the brand love was coming from the fact that they already recognized that they're never going to be the biggest OTT platform. They're never gonna, because of the amount of money you need to spend on Netflix, then you're never gonna be the person who's, you're not gonna have Hotstar numbers which are 200 million or whatever they claim it to be, right? Netflix in India has probably like 7 to 8 million customers. But for them, Netflix had to be the first brand you thought of when you thought of OTTs. Irrespective of whatever I say, I said, in the OTT space, Netflix is the first thing, right? And they want to generate brand love through every touch point. And one of the key theories that we created for them was what we call bullets and cannonballs, where we started to create content by creating hypothesis of, what we think the customer is going to want, and then firing bullets in those directions. If it hits, we convert them into cannonballs and we fire bigger cannonballs. And the biggest example for somebody like me was that we do content for them, and we created an IP for them on YouTube where there were two influencers whose full-time job, it was to review memes. That was their full-time job. It was outlandish even in my head. I saw that video when that video came to me, and I was like, I called up the guy who heads my video agency and I said, dude, what is this? Right? This person is incoherent. The video is not correct. He's talking rubbish. This is a branded piece of video content. Why are you taking this live? And he turned around and told me, he said, let it go live. I said, what do you mean? I said, they'll fire us, boss. What are you doing? And life has it. It went live. It had 4-5 million organic views in about 2 hours. The people who are consuming that piece of content were absolutely resonating with that piece of content. All the marketing I had learned in the last 15 years went out of the window in under those 3 hours. And everything that I taught myself my entire life, how to present it, oh, brand logo has to be there, brand logo has to be big. That's the conversation we have with all of them most of the times. But I learned that the customer has completely changed. I am not the customer. Therefore, my insight is not the customer insight. And therefore, my journey is not the customer journey. And I have been struggling since then to give creative feedback to anything that comes my way, because the customer is in so many different places. So I live by this bullets and cannonballs approach, where for any of them to start to create insights, you need to fire in different sorts of directions. And I think lots of brands are doing it, which is why you're seeing the kind of work that's coming into the whole marketing space. So experiment, and whatever sticks, make it bigger. That was the biggest learning from COVID. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the insights. This side. So my name is Himanshu, and I have a question for you. In this new age of data, we generate lots of data, and we try to make correlations. And based on that, we try to reach to our customers. But in our QM class, the very first thing taught to us was correlations are not causations. And in this slight difference of the concept, sometimes companies went into the wrong directions. So, as a marketing strategist, what do you do to stay away from this blur line?
Okay, I will try that. So I think yeah, of course. I mean, correlation should not be confused with causality, which is true. I think the best way to find that out is what he just suggested. That I think if you run experiments, and the power of digital is that it helps you run low-cost experiments. There are even tools that let you do A/B testing on all kinds of fronts, not just conversion, even on content. You can try different subsets, so you can do all of it. So I think real-world testing is the best way to stay away from this fallacy. So
I wonder if you have a specific context for that question. Do you see that in the customer acquisition journey? Are you saying that where are you seeing that applied to in your question?
We saw one video which was on the digital product management, and we were focused on jobs to be done. So in that video, that was a video from.
Seems like an inside joke.
So in that they talk why.
I can't hear you.
They were talking about buying milkshakes. Why people are buying milkshakes in the McD stores. So there was lots of research going on, but they couldn't figure out the exact reason. When they focus on the jobs to be done part, then the real insight came through. So that's why.
So I think it's about identifying where, because as I mentioned previously as well, right? You've got to learn fast. Yeah. Okay. Hello. Hello. Yeah. So it's about breaking things fast and learning and then moving on, right? Because you may not always get the answer the first time, and especially if you're not connected directly to the consumer, you can't identify milkshake habits basis the 5 people or everybody out here also that you do, because everybody out here doesn't go to McDonald's and buy milkshakes, right? So you've got to learn, understand, and identify what specifically works for that particular area. As you mentioned, in one of your other classes, you would have learned about A/B testing. You would have learned about other techniques as well. So it's not always that one size fits all and one question has only one answer. There would be many answers that would be there. So,
All right.
And that's a journey that you're going to have to take for the rest of your career.
Thank you.
One final question.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks, the panel, for an insightful discussion. So my question is regarding the personal information. For example, in case of banks and in case of L'Oreal, where people will have the facial recognition. So how come we will make the more ethical trade-off between the ethical and the business? Where is the line where we draw the trade-off?
Yeah, see, so the laws of the land come before anything else, okay? So even when, let's say, we acquire data, there is something called consent, okay, that has to come along with it. If there is no consent, there is no activation of that data. We have a lot of data on which, we do not activate because the consent is not very clear. So you have to be very clear on the ethical side of things. However, data is important for personalization because especially what we see in the world of beauty is that many times consumer does not know what she needs and the statement is very, very broad in nature. So that's how it helps. But you stay on the right side of ethics and law, and that's how it works. And you have only those fields populated in your CRM. And if you don't have consent, you don't even activate that CRM. That's the principles for us.
I mean, for banks, there is no blurred line. You have to have consent. You have to have certain consumer consent to even start storing that data, right? How you store that data also comes with certain boundaries. So when it comes to marketing, I think the privacy bit, right, especially on the ethics side of it, my take is if you have consent, you activate the data, but if you don't have consent, you don't. And there's not much you can do. There's a law on it. You can't even use it, and it comes with heavy penalties. However, the real ethic is how you secure that data, how you ensure that data doesn't go out, how you ensure you don't monetize that data is something that's the ethics comes in. At least in India, we can't play around with privacy. That's especially on banks, so you definitely can't. So when it comes to consent, you gotta have that data coming in, else you can't even store it. Like I said before, and ensure that you secure it, you don't monetize it, and you don't take advantage in any shape or form. So that's typically how you do it on marketing front as well.
Super,
Just one thing, and especially on multinational organizations, what happens is, you have to be compliant with the India law, the, GDPR, Europe, everything. So I think, when you're sharing data, maybe you can think about what are the kind of brands you're sharing data with, and, that can give more comfort in the entire concern around privacy.
Now Saloni takes over.
Yeah, so thank you so much, first of all the panelists and moderator for this enriching discussion. I literally took a page full of notes, and I'm sure my audience also would have been intrigued by the discussion and the topics that we have covered today. Thank you, Shabi sir, for steering this discussion so tactfully, covering all the different facets of marketing and different industries that everyone come, and the experiences that they shared today. It was amazing to, reflect upon. Some of the most important pointers that I have taken back today is the importance of consumer behavior and maintaining the ethical practices. So it actually makes a lot of sense that how the consent, the privacy of the customer helps maintain the consumer retention, not exploiting on the CAC, the customer acquisition cost that we talked about. It is so important in today's world. And we talked about the beauty tech, how augmented reality is playing its bit. Then we talked about the omnichannel, how important it is to adopt the technology as well as the change management, and also having the visualization power to acknowledge that. Now, I would just like to request the panelists and everyone to stay seated for the felicitation and the group photo. And as we draw this enriching discussion, the conclave to a close, I extend my sincere gratitude to our guests, to the faculty members, to all the participants who contributed in making this discussion even more enriching by asking those insightful questions. And of course, our organizing team, whose dedication and efforts have transformed Samavesh into an unforgettable journey. Let us keep learning and innovating. Now, as we move into the final phase of this conclave, I'd like to request our keynote speaker, Mr. Rajiv Nair, to kindly join us on stage, and also all the panelists to step forward for the felicitation ceremony. For giving the memento to our esteemed guests, I'd like to request Jignesh to kindly come forward. To cherish the memories of our marketing conclave, we would like to conclude it by clicking a group photograph. I'd like to request our dean and respected faculty members to kindly join us on stage for the group photo. Now, finally, I would like to request our Samavesh organizing team and marketing core team to kindly join us on stage for a group photograph. I'll also join. Ma'am, please, you come, please. Requesting all the students to join us for high tea at MLS Tilt area. Thank you everyone and have a wonderful time ahead.